Alright, hello everybody. Welcome back to another First Impressions review video. Yesterday on my YouTube channel, I uploaded a quick, like 5-minute video on this game that came out yesterday called Space MOLMAE. It is this developer's Magoo Jabi Studio. It is their first title on Steam. It's only $1, but I hit it kind of hard for being a little bit too basic. I wasn't impressed by the fact that the game didn't have any audio sliders or resolution or any option for full screen or windowed or anything like that. But also, I read here that you compete for records on Steam. And on the Steam page, I immediately looked for the leaderboards here. And when you come up here and there's no leaderboards, I accuse the game of having no leaderboards. But it actually does. If you look inside the game, you can hit the 2 key and it'll bring up a screen showing where you rank in the game. So I wanted to go ahead and correct that and make a new video. And I also wanted to go ahead and say I played this game just a little bit longer. You can see that I still have very little time in the game. But this game is a little bit more addicting than meets the eye. Its simplicity is actually a blessing, I think. The fact that it doesn't have 10 million different things on the screen, like a game that I might make, for example. Anyway, guys, let's go ahead and show you what I'm talking about here. In Space MOLMAE. And even though I did recommend the game, I was kind of critical on that. I said that it's not a bad game, it's just severely lacking in polish. The developers responded professionally, thanks for playing our game. And so they're going to fix some things. So we're going to go ahead and jump back into this and see if there's more than meets the eye here with Space MOLMAE. I am very open-minded when it comes to this kind of stuff, and I can admit when I might be just a little bit wrong. So let's go back and jump into Space MOLMAE. A Unity game here. Okay. So this is what I'm talking about right here. You don't see it right here yet. There is no leaderboards that you can see. All you have is credit, which I looked at yesterday. It shows that 3 guys made the game, and you have somebody doing the support food, which I find kind of funny. And then you have sound on and off. So I didn't really like that. I like sound sliders. I like the ability to adjust the sound based on what you want. I don't want to have to turn it completely off, but I don't want it blasting my ears off as well. So that is definitely a recommendation to the developer. I know it's only a 99-cent game, but give us a sound slider or at least the ability to hit plus and minus or something like that to adjust the sound level. And then also adding a windowed option or a full screen option, even if we can't change the resolution, would be, I feel like, the least you could do here. So there are a few, options I would like to see in the game. If we hit escape, I do believe, yeah, it also hitting the escape key should do the same thing as a 0. It should exit the game. So, any game that you make, hitting the escape key should either exit the game or give you an option, are you sure you want to quit? That kind of thing. But anyway, let's go ahead and jump in. Press enter. Okay, and this is what I'm talking about. It's really loud, guys. And so, like escape here, so the game doesn't have any pause control either, right? So let me adjust my headset volume because it's really loud, so I'm not screaming. But yeah, the escape key doesn't pause either. Let me go ahead and hit 1 and retry. Yeah, there's no spacebar, does nothing. There's no pause control at all. Which for a game like this, what if the phone rings? What if somebody knocks at your door? What if whatever. If something comes up and maybe you gotta respond. Maybe the volume's just deafening you. And somebody yells at you in your house, hey, ask you a question or whatever. You need to be able to not only hear that person talking to you in your house, but you need to be able to pause the game and respond, right? What if your partner drives up with groceries or whatever, says, hey, can I have some help or whatever? And you might want to pause the game. You might be doing really well in the game, and you might want to pause the game and go help them carry in some groceries or whatever, then get back to your game. So I'm just saying there's no excuse. There's a million different reasons you might need a pause in a game. And there's no excuse for this game to not have a pause, to not have a sound slider, and to not have a way to exit the game. So there's a lot of things that this game definitely needs, in my opinion. Let's go ahead and retry though. So you shoot automatically. There is no shoot button. I mean, it's a very simple game, but sometimes these really simple games are just super addicting. I feel like the collision detection could be made a little bit better. I think my hitbox is a little bit big sometimes. When you make a game like this, and to these developers, you always want... See, like that time it felt just a little bit cheap. Not real bad. But you always want to give the advantage to the player in a game like this, right? So you want the hitbox to be really big on your bullets, but on the enemy's bullets or the enemy's collision box, you want it to actually be a little bit smaller. So that you don't feel like you get, like, even if you only get hit by 1 pixel, sometimes that feels cheap to the player. Alright. So let's say that this is the player, right? And let's just say the red guys are the enemies, because that's pretty common, right? So, obviously, we're shooting here with our blue buttons, right? And one thing you want to do is you want to make the player always feel super supreme, right? And good, even when maybe they're not. So if we zoom in on this enemy here, right? You don't want the hitbox for your bullets to just be like the hitbox or just a couple of pixels wide or anything like that. What you want is, let's say your bullet is coming in this way, right? For the enemy or whatever. So let's just say you have a hitbox that is only about as big as this bullet. So you have a real small hitbox like that. What's going to happen here is your bullet's going to go right by this enemy. And the player is going to feel like, what the fuck, man? I hit it. I guarantee you that's what the player is going to feel like. The player is going to feel like, what the fuck, man? I hit that thing. I should have hit it. And even though it didn't, you want your player, again, to always feel supreme, especially in a single-player game like this. Now, when you come into multiplayer and stuff like that, then you have to be a lot more fair. But in a single-player game like this, you can be super unfair, make the player feel really awesome, even when they're not, like I said. So what you want to do is you want to get rid of that little hitbox for a bullet, for example. And I learned this, like I said, with rock and roll. What you want to do is you actually want to make this hitbox, instead of being like that, you want to make this hitbox be way bigger. Maybe not quite this big, but you want this hitbox to be a lot bigger than your little teeny bullet, so that if it does graze by the side or it would have missed, now you're suddenly going to collide with this enemy and get that hit, right? And the player is going to feel really good. Yeah! Like the player's not going to sit there and think about it like, oh, that should have missed. No. They're going to feel like they kicked ass. So that's what's going to happen. And that's what feels good to the player. So on the same token, right, we want our player in this game, right, to have a smaller hitbox. So for example, if this enemy is coming by us, let's go ahead and zoom in on our player again, right, like this. And let's say our red enemy right here. So let's say that our red enemy is coming by. Well, let's do this. Let's go ahead and say our red enemy is coming by like that, and he gets a hit right here. Because that is a hit. Because let's say our hitboxes are exactly the same size as the player and exactly the same size as the enemy. So that's going to register as a hit. Well, let's say that I'm moving this way, and let's say the enemy's, just moving this way, for example, because the players don't home in on you in this game. But that's going to be a hit. And again, same thing is up here where I talked about the small hitbox is going to make the player feel cheated. They're going to feel like they should have hit this thing even though they didn't. We want to increase that hitbox for the player's bullet and make it super unfair for the enemy. This is super unfair for the enemy. So if this is a multiplayer game and this is another player, this player here would feel super, screwed in this situation. But we don't care about this because this is AI. Right? So that's why we want to increase the hitbox way big so the player feels like they're a badass even when they're not. Same thing here. We want to make sure that this hitbox is not the same size as the player. You might want to make the hitbox the exact same size as the enemy here, but what we want to do on the player in this situation, right, is we don't want that hit to happen. So what you want to do for the player is you probably want to make a hitbox something like, let's redo that. For the player, you probably want to make the hitbox something closer to this. This way, if this enemy kind of slides by here, even though this should have been a hit and the player should have died, remember, this is a game where you only have one life. And if you get hit once, you're dead. So it's very important that the player gets the luxury of slipping by some of these hits that would kill them. So we want to make the hitbox smaller so that even when they're barely hit like this, they get away with it and they're able to go ahead and pass through. And I guarantee you, this guy's going this way, I'm going this way. Should have been a hit, the player's not going to notice. Instead, the player is going to feel like a badass, or they're going to feel like, oh, hell yeah, I actually got away with one. I squeezed through there. They're going to think, oh, yeah, I'm so good. I got a narrow, I got by there so good. They're going to think they're good, basically, even though they should have died. All right, so to go ahead and illustrate this point, if we look back at my own game, Poggers, you'll see how near hits, right? Hits with the bunny rabbit, Poggers, and the cobras in this field actually give you extra points for barely clipping the enemies as we see this slowing down. Because every time these snakes flash, it means you collided. But I actually give the player extra points for that. And that's what feels good to a player. So it's always important in a single player game like this, and this goes for all indie developers out there. If you're making a single player game like that, this is very important. Make the player feel like they got hits when they shouldn't have, right? A miss actually turns into a hit. And on the same token, when an enemy might graze by him and what should have killed him, we want to make that hitbox player on smaller on the player so that the player feels like a badass and gets away with one. So I think if the developers for this game use this advice, I think this game's going to feel and play even better. Remember, it's even more important in a game like this simply because you only have one life, right? So I do think that the hitboxes for the bullets are fine. The only thing I'm concerned about is I would make the hitbox for the player himself a little bit smaller than the player, just as I showed you in that example. So let's go ahead and jump back in, guys. Because some of these times I feel I'm getting hit and I die and the game's over, and I feel a little bit cheated, even though I'm sure that the enemy actually hit me. Now we got a power up here. It only lasts a few seconds though, like 10 seconds maybe. I like the music for this game. So there's a lot of things these indie developers have done right. And the more you play this, even if they don't adjust the hitboxes and stuff like that, the more you play this, the more you're going to get used to it. So I want that power up. What did it do? Oh, I got shielding or something for a minute there. 7,800. Let's try again. I want that #1 spot, baby. Yeah, the more you play this, the more you're going to get used to the hitbox size as the player, and you're going to learn what you can get away with and what you can't. So it looks like that's kind of what you want to do, is you kind of want to go back and forth so you blow away, like when you're moving forward. You kind of want to go back and forth in zigzags so you hit all the enemies within a range. Got some shielding, baby. Like this. Oh, what? What? How did I die there? Yeah, that felt really cheap right there. That felt really cheap. Alright, I want to go back and I want to see this. I want to see what happened because that felt so cheap. Let's see what happened here. It's right here. Nothing's there right now. I blew this guy up, right? Yep, I blew that guy up. What happened here? I blew that guy up. And then this guy here... Oh, okay. I hit it before I shot it. Okay, that makes sense. Alright. So I hit it, and then it showed the hitbox. So... you probably, to the developers, you don't want the player to feel cheated like this. I did not get cheated, but it looked like I did. So this is another fix for the developers. So what you want to do here in this situation is we saw an enemy and I crashed into the enemy, which killed me. And then you make the enemy die or whatever, or drop the loot box if he dies, right? So if he gets shot. What you want to do to the developers is you want to go into these enemies and make sure that if they die because the player hits them, that they do not drop the loot box, right? You want to make sure that the loot box doesn't spawn. You want to just have it go invisible or still show him or whatever in this situation. Because if the player dies by running into an enemy and they see a hitbox, as I did right there, the player's going to feel cheated. Even though, this is what I'm talking about, even though I clearly ran into this enemy by looking at the replay, I feel cheated because I saw the hitbox. So again, just go into your enemy code, go into the enemy, and say, hey, if the player runs into me, I'm not going to spawn a loot box or a power-up or whatever you call it. This right here is not going to spawn if the player runs into me. Because then the player is going to see that fucking loot box and be like, what the fuck, man? I should have collected a loot box. I didn't die. When clearly, I did die. I ran into the fucking enemy, right? I didn't shoot the enemy. So, there's a few things that hopefully can help the developers make this game a better game. It's these little things that feel better to the player. So the player is feeling cheated even though he's not being cheated, right? That was obviously clear there. I ran into the stuff. But there's these little things that you can fix so the player doesn't feel cheated. Like the hitbox with the enemy running into the enemy, like I showed earlier before I started playing. Like I drew out, on the tablet. God damn it. Now, a lot of these times it's very clear what I did, and I realized I fucked up there, right? But you always want the player to feel like a god, even when they're not, like I said. Right? Never allow the player to feel cheated. But for the most part, this game is pretty cool. I like it. There's just a few adjustments. And then again, give us an audio slider, give us a way to pause the game. Very important to be able to pause the game. Even though the games don't last that long. And I know you guys are out there thinking, like, Zach, your games only last 15 seconds anyway. Like, what are you talking about a pause for? But let's say I did have a really good game and it was almost at the high score, right? Something came up and I had to go, and I didn't want to, lose my chance at hitting the #1 spot or whatever. I mean, just a pause game. There's no excuse for any game like this to not have a pause. Alright guys, I am definitely going to try to hit this #1 ranking, and I will record it as I play. We'll see how long it takes me to beat this #1 spot. But I am going to definitely hit this #1 spot in this game. And I will assure you of that. I think this game is that much fun. It could be better. Like I said, I've pointed out the things that I think the developers need to do. And the things that I've pointed out are easy fixes. They're super easy fixes for the developer. But let's go ahead and play this game here and see what I can do this time. Because we're doing pretty good. And I don't want... Yep. Every time you say that, that's exactly when you die. So, I only got to get about, 4 times the score that I'm getting right now? I think I had 7,500 once. 2. Yeah, 7,800. I'm in ninth place still. So I think there's only 9 people that have ever played the game. And a lot of these high scores are probably the developers. Let's be honest. So anyway, guys, I want to go ahead and thank you guys for watching. Pretty fun little game. Hopefully the developers take my feedback to heart and make the simple little changes that they can make to this game. I mean, we're talking less than an hour of work to add a pause, to add a sound slider, to, to make the game a little more friendly, making the player feel more kick-ass, changing those hitboxes around. Really simple changes in the game. They're just simple hitbox changes. And then I think this game would be even better, and it would definitely get a high recommend on my side for only 99 cents. Do I think this game's worth it? Yes, I think this game's worth it, but I still think there's a few little things, like I said, that the developers can do to make this game even better. This has been Zaxter99. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. We'll see you in the next video. Take care.